Welcome everyone. My name is Christian McKelvey, Head of Marketplace at Catch, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's webinar on behalf of Nora and Similarweb. Today's theme will be Black Friday. What are the latest search trends in the shopping behavior insights? A few housekeeping rules before we kick off. So this webinar will be recorded and will be available on demand via Nora TV. If you have any questions, we'll have time towards the end, about 10 minutes at the end of the session after the presentation for any questions. Feel free to send them through on the chat if you are tuning in now, and we'll try and get through as many as we can by the end. I'd love to now hand over to today's host of the session and introduce Anet Arakeli. Anet is here on behalf of Similarweb, and Anet, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Christian, and good morning, everyone. I would like to thank you all for joining today, and thank you, Nora, for bringing us together for today's session. Before we get into it, I just thought I would take this opportunity to quickly introduce myself and Similarweb. So my name is Anet, and I'm an account manager at Similarweb. Over the years, I've worked with many retailers, big and small, helping them with their digital marketing strategies and providing them with the support they need to gain more market share across their industry, and more importantly, providing insights into how their competitors are performing within the digital landscape. The data I'll be drawing on today comes from Similarweb's digital intelligence platform. So it provides web traffic, search engine, competitive intelligence data to uncover consumer behavior, like what are people looking for, where they're searching for it, and which websites are getting the most market share for specific brands or products. So these insights allow retailers to understand their own progress, report results in an ongoing manner, and make dynamic changes to their digital marketing strategies as the trends shift. So this is essential for today's online retailers, given how quickly consumer behavior changes. As Christian mentioned, with the end of year peak season just around the corner, today I'll be unpacking the consumer traffic trends behind two of Australia's biggest online sales, Black Friday and Boxing Day. So now, when it comes to Australian retail sales events, Boxing Day needs no introductions. December 26 is such a key event on the calendar. It's baked into the holiday traditions of many, with a morning of bargain hunting, followed by a Boxing Day test match or an afternoon spending fending off sunburns at the beach. For decades, it's been the premier sales event, but traditionally it's been a bricks and mortar affair, with storefront windows plastered with bright red Boxing Day sale promotions for weeks leading up. Black Friday, on the other hand, is a relatively new entrant to the market. So essentially, it's the US version of Boxing Day, which takes place the weekend following Thanksgiving, which this year falls on November 25. Although both events have their root in the physical world, today they're major traffic drivers in the digital world, bringing millions of shoppers to Australian e-commerce sites every year. So in today's webinar, I'll be sharing insights to help you understand when, where, and how these consumers are searching for the best online deals, as well as what they're looking for. So armed with this knowledge, hopefully you can supercharge your own peak season this year. So let's start with a high-level view of how much traffic these events generate and how this has shifted over the past few years. Here, we've also added Black Friday's smaller cousin, Cyber Monday, as many retailers stretch their sales over the entire weekend. So the first thing we can see here is that in 2019 and 2020, Black Friday has been the most popular online sales event. This is largely due to the fact that here in Australia, it was only ever an online event. So while Boxing Day started in the bricks and mortar world, Black Friday Down Under has always been online. As such, consumers looking for Black Friday deals know to go digital first. Last year, however, we can see that Boxing Day catches up. So both Black Friday and Boxing Day attracted around 20 million visits. So this is a trend we expect to continue this year as shoppers have become more comfortable with e-commerce. So what happened between 2019 and 2021 to bring more shoppers online? You're thinking it, I'm going to say it, COVID. So back in 2020, most of us were just living in lockdown thanks to COVID-19 restrictions, unable to leave the house, stuck indoors. Digital was mainly the way to purchase anything. You can ask my husband, it definitely was for me. So this was a massive accelerator for e-commerce, and it brought a lot more people online. This is why in 2020, we see the highest traffic numbers of the past 3 years. So 22 million for Black Friday, 18 million for Cyber Monday, and 20 million for Boxing Day. But that year is an outlier. What's important here for online retailers is how many of these additional shoppers continued shopping online after the lockdowns were eased. And here we can see that there were millions more Australians visiting e-commerce sites during last year's major sales events. So when we compare last year's traffic to 2019, when things were much more normal, there's significant increases during all three events. 17% more shoppers during Black Friday, close to 20% more for Cyber Monday, and an incredible 23% more for Boxing Day. So while these numbers sound impressive, when we map out e-commerce traffic over the year, we can see just how many shoppers are showing up for these sales than on your average day. Australian e-commerce traffic is here in the blue. So the two large recurring spikes in traffic are Black Friday and Boxing Day. So this really helps to visualize the massive opportunity that these two events present to online retailers. When we compare Australian traffic trends to the average of the 5 major European markets, which you'll see in the orange, there's 2 key insights to note. The first is that Boxing Day is unique to us. Because the Europeans don't have the event, their online traffic drops to its lowest level of the year on December 26. Ours, on the other hand, peaks to one of its highest. So it's critical to take advantage of the increased shopping behavior. Don't take Boxing Day for granted. The second is that post-COVID increase in traffic is longer lived here in Australia. So whereas European traffic just snapped back almost immediately to pre-COVID levels, our traffic numbers have stayed consistently and considerably higher than they were in 2019. So while those are the differences between our two markets, Europe and Australia share one very important traffic trend when it comes to Black Friday. So when we measured the traffic to Australian and European e-commerce sites in November, we found that increased traffic volumes weren't isolated to just Black Friday itself. Here we've mapped out the share of days in November where traffic was at least 80% of the Black Friday peak. And this figure has been increasing every year for the past 3 years. For Australia, a third of the days in November has significantly increased in traffic numbers. So what this does is it presents online retailers with a much longer sales cycle that isn't strictly tied to the Friday itself. And this means that consumers are starting their sales shopping earlier. And so it's important for retailers to start their Black Friday communications and marketing strategies earlier to attract these additional shoppers. There's a saying around this, the early bird gets the worm. But you're probably thinking, how much earlier? We see the acceleration really kick into gear about 5 days before Black Friday itself. So this trend has been increasing every year, and we expect even greater numbers of shoppers to visit e-commerce sites in the week before Black Friday this year as well. So harnessing this interest in the days leading up to Black Friday, we can have an outsized impact on your performance. So by investing in multi-channel content and maximizing visibility of your sales in the days leading up to the peak, you can build greater demand. So when planning your communications, just keep in mind that there's an initial burst of consumer interest around 15 days before the event, which then really ramps up during the week of Black Friday. One final insight I'll point out here is that last year we saw a significant increase during Cyber Monday. So don't forget Black Friday's little cousin when crafting your content. These insights have all been around the when do people start shifting into sales mode. Then the next obvious question is, where are consumers finding information on these sales, and which channels should retailers actually use to reach them? So just bear with me. There is a lot of data on this slide, but we'll get through it one by one. So on the left here, we look at the traffic share of different marketing channels from Australia's top retailers during the Black Friday rush in November. So what we can see is that the leaders are outperforming in 2 specific channels, organic and paid search. So last year, the top retailers, which I'll unpack in a moment, attracted 38.4% of organic search and 16.7% through paid search channels. So together, these channels contribute to more than half of their total traffic. So if you were to compare this to the average channel breakdown for Australian e-commerce retailers, 28.4% of the traffic stemming from organic search and only 11% from paid search. So it's performance in these two channels that separate the leaders from the rest of the pack. So what do these numbers mean in plain English? It means that when preparing your communication strategy ahead of Black Friday, paid search investments need to be a big part of that mix. So we're seeing a lot of click-through activity on paid search placements when it comes to Black Friday. And part of the reason for this has to do with how consumers are searching for Black Friday deals. So on the right, looking at the top 10 Black Friday related search terms for last year, the top 7 were unbranded general searches for Black Friday sales. Almost 2/3 of the searches, so about 64% in Australia last year, were for generic information on Black Friday sales. So with the vast majority of consumers not searching for a particular store, the right paid ad can make your site stand out. So now I promised I'd unpack Australia's Black Friday and Boxing Day leaders. So let's take a look at who these brands are and how their traffic performs. Black Friday has a clear leader, and surprise, surprise, that's Amazon. Last year, they received around 500,000 more visits than their closest rival, JB Hi-Fi. While these two brands lead the pack, we can see that Myer, which is in the light blue, and Kogan in the pink, and Kmart, which is in the green, received significant spikes during Black Friday last year. But it gets really interesting on Boxing Day. There's far more online competition here. JB Hi-Fi actually overtakes Amazon as the market leader on December 26. So while Myer isn't too far behind, with traffic to both sites skyrocketing, both these sites received around 1 million more visits during Boxing Day. So there's a lot of potential customers online for you to target. So after covering the when, the where, and the who of this peak season sales trends, now it's time to look into the what. So what product categories are most in demand during Black Friday and Boxing Day? For this slide, we've grouped products into 6 most popular categories. You have clothing, shoes and accessories, home, electronics, health and beauty, and outdoors. With Black Friday being the first sales event coming up in just a few weeks, we'll focus on the purchasing trend during this event last year. So on the left, we have the estimated share of views for products in each category. Clothing, shoes, and accessories attracted the most with about 34% of visits to products in this category, followed by 30% of visits to home products. Although these categories attracted the most visits, when we look at actual purchases, the health and beauty and electronics category outperformed when it comes to conversion rates. We can see the health and beauty products attracted about 8% of visits, but made up 13% of conversions, while electronics attracted about 19% of visits, but 21% of conversions. So what this tells us is that shoppers in these two categories are more motivated and more likely to purchase during Black Friday sales, which is something to keep in mind in your marketing strategy. So if you stock products in either of these two categories. So diving into the conversion trend a little bit deeper, it's clear that the electronics category sees a significant purchase uplift in November. When comparing the conversion rate in November last year to the conversion rate in Q3 last year, purchases increased by about 35%, which shows there's a really strong consumer interest in electronics during Black Friday. Health and beauty also sees a good uplift with 9% higher conversion in November. Although clothing, shoes, and accessories and home don't show a strong uplift in conversions, in absolute numbers, they have the most purchases. So while there's still an appetite for these products during Black Friday, the most motivated shoppers were those searching for deals on electronics. This may be due to consumers waiting for November sales before buying Christmas presents, or it may be due to the pricing strategies of the leading retailers. So underscoring this behavior, we can see that when comparing converted visits into October, consumer electronics is the only category to see a higher uplift in November, so Black Friday, and then December, which is during Boxing Day and Christmas sales. So typically during Black Friday sales, we see heavy discounting and promotional bundles on products like gaming consoles, computers, phones. So those consumers are, in a sense, well-trained to shop during this event. Interestingly, though, last year, the outdoor category performed better in October than it did during Black Friday and saw increased conversions in December. So what this tells us is that for this category, shoppers were more active during Boxing Day and Christmas sales than Black Friday. That being said, we know who those two giants are in this space. You have BCF and Anaconda, which we've also noticed have been advertising Black Friday already. So let's revisit this next year to see if there's been an uplift in this category for the month of November. These are the category trends across Australia's e-commerce industry. But if we zoom into the performance of 5 of the leading local retailers, we can see how understanding these trends can help your site outperform. So here we've broken down the converted visits across 5 categories for Australia's largest department stores, as well as the world's largest department store, Amazon. So by focusing on department stores, we can get a better view of how these different categories play out for the different retailers. So if we were to have zoomed in on JB Hi-Fi here, the bar would basically just be green, given their focus on consumer electronics. So we've just excluded them for this slide. Last year during November, Amazon and Big W had a high amount of fragmentation across the 5 major product categories, while Kmart, Target, and Myer had higher conversions in particular categories. Kmart has a high proportion of converted visits in the home category, Target in the clothing and accessories, and Myer in the health and beauty. So when making discounting and digital marketing decisions in the lead up to Black Friday, the industry trends I've taken you through today, along with the competitive intelligence, provide strong insight to inform your strategy. As an example, while all 3 of these retailers performed very well in particular categories, they also all stock consumer electronics and have a lot of capacity to increase conversions within this category. From the data I've shown you earlier, we know that consumers searching for electronics are more motivated Black Friday shoppers. So with a sales and marketing strategy that puts more emphasis on deals and bundles within this space, whether it's for gaming consoles, phones, laptops, headphones, audiovisual equipment, etc., they could carve out an even greater share of that Black Friday pie. At the end of the day, the point is that it's important to understand not just how your own site is performing, but how you're performing against your key competitors and just the industry benchmark. So armed with this intelligence, you can make more strategic decisions to help your brand stand out, whether that's during Black Friday, Boxing Day, end of financial year, or just business in general. I've shared some insights today about when consumers are searching and shopping for Black Friday and Boxing Day deals, where shoppers are finding and interacting with information about these sales, who the local leaders are during these events, and finally, what product categories are leading visitations and conversions during these events. So to summarize the key takeaways and actionable insights you can use to prepare for your own peaks. Firstly, the sales cycle for Boxing Day and particularly Black Friday, it's getting longer. So don't wait until the last minute to communicate your sales, because consumer interest starts peaking earlier and earlier every year. Particularly during Black Friday, consumers don't necessarily have a retailer in mind. They just want the best deals. So paid search is a great channel to use to create visibility for your deals. Although Amazon leads the industry on Black Friday, local retailers are gaining pace and even beating them outright on Boxing Day. So keep an eye on your competitors, but it's also important to be aware of new players entering the market and going big during these events. Finally, product categories like consumer electronics and health and beauty attract more motivated shoppers during Black Friday. So if you stock these categories, make sure deals are in this space are a centerpiece of any digital marketing strategy. Thank you for listening. That's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, please fire away. I'll hand it back to Christian, who can address these questions.
Thanks, Annette. That was an awesome presentation and some fantastic insights there. I think just to kick it off, one of the first questions actually is, thanks, Annette, the insights here are fascinating. Now, this has come a couple of times, but we've got some questions about how do you, where's the source of this data coming from?
So our data comes from a unique combination of sources. We don't just rely on the one source. So this ensures we're creating the most accurate data set in the market. So to do this, we gain data from 4 key sources. The first is publicly available data, where we capture and index data from billions of websites and apps. The second is data from our contributory network. So this is a group of people globally who share their anonymized browsing behavior. So this allows us to see how people are naturally and organically browsing the web. The third is what we refer to as data partnerships. So these are additional data sources that help us expand and enrich our own data sets, which we then use to ensure we're not relying on just the one source. The final one is direct measurement data. So we have companies who give us their direct measurement metrics, and they share that first-party data directly with us to help us calibrate our algorithm. So then we can benchmark what we're collecting ourselves against what's actually happening in the industry. Just one thing to note as well is that all these data sources, they're all aggregated and anonymized. So what this means is that we're not collecting any personal identifiable information. Our data is about how people are using the internet, not the users themselves. I hope that answers that question.
I think so. And I think just another reminder to everyone that's tuning in now, please, if you've got any questions, feel free to chuck them in through the Q&A section just at the bottom there. Love to hear them. Now is the time to pick Annette's brain on some of these. I think for myself, just as we mentioned, Annette, I'm currently in the process of ripping up a backyard deck. And he touched upon how outdoors, which is topical, obviously.
Surprisingly, my husband's doing the same right now. He's been doing a lot of research on how to build a deck.
It's a shame we didn't get in touch. I could have given him lots of material for the deck, and there we go. Could have.
I might actually take you up on that, but yes, let's go on.
But you mentioned the outdoors performed better in October. So just for myself, why do you think that is? Black Friday.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I work closely with a few retailers in this space last year, and what we saw was that in September, October, those were when the restrictions were well and truly easing. So this led to a surge in people looking for camping, outdoors and fishing gear because people just couldn't wait to get outside. In fact, I had a son during lockdown, my beautiful COVID baby. And I remember at that time, we just couldn't wait to get out and hit the road. So that's probably why I would think, but more than happy to do a bit more research on that and get back to whoever asked that question.
Fantastic. And I think I've got a few more coming through now, which is great. I think just wanted to quickly address with the webinar, Nora will circulate information after the event, will be available on Nora TV. So just jumping through now, there's a few good ones here. We touched upon, there's a question here, we touched upon e-commerce as a whole, how it was performing pre and post COVID. How do you think it's been performing yourself before COVID and prior, not just on the key seasons itself that we've covered here today?
Yeah, of course. So overall, we saw an uplift in traffic visitations as more shoppers are going online since the pandemic. We actually ran an analysis of traffic to Australia's top 250 e-commerce sites in 2019, 2020 and 2021, and found that there was almost 2 billion more visits last year when compared to pre-COVID. So the lockdowns of 2020 meant that those who previously hesitant to buy goods and services online, people like my parents, had no choice but to do so during COVID. So in the process of turning to e-commerce, they discover the choice, the flexibility, and the convenience of online shopping. And now there's just no looking back, I guess. I hope that answers that question a little bit.
Absolutely. And, yeah, we've got a few firing in here, and just as well, any questions that have come through, we'll pass on to Anet and Similarweb, and I'm sure they'll be able to get back where possible on some of these questions today if we can't get through them all. I think just conscious with time, we've got a few more coming through. I think we'll jump to consumer electronics. I know that was touched upon quite significantly in your presentation there. I think we have a question here about what were some of what were the top products people were searching for that were keeping shoppers so motivated?
So I know we didn't touch on that much during this presentation, but gaming consoles were at the top of the wish list pretty much, particularly things like Nintendo Switch console bundles and PlayStation 4, 5. In fact, these have been some of the most popular products for the past 3 Black Fridays in a row. So we can see that trend is continuing. Also in high demand with things like Apple AirPods and wireless headphones more generally, just headphones in general. And then I believe within the home category, which was also a strong performer, there was products like your bedding and quilt covers and quilt cover sets and so forth that were quite big. And even candles. I can tell you I'm a corporate of that as well. I've got too many candles at home. But yeah, those are probably the top products that I can think of based on analysis that we've previously done. But again, more than happy to do a further analysis on those top products within Black Friday to help out.
Fantastic. I'm definitely a corporate. Funnily enough, the candles as well. I
think everyone's a sucker for some candles. I don't throw my husband under the bus, but the Glass House salted caramel one, really, it's probably his favorite one.
Look, it's nice. It's like smelled cookies. I think I'm getting
it's delicious.
Delicious. But anyway, that's for a different webinar on candles and scents.
Yeah.
I think look, we've got time maybe for one more. I think a great question more just on the data sets. I think you touched upon this, but a question about like whether UK is included in the EU data or are they separate, if you happen to know.
That's a good question. There was in one of the slides, we did specify. So yeah, so in the top 5, you've got UK, Germany, France, Spain, and Italy. So those are the markets that we covered within Europe. And we only included those 5, but we can always go more broad, of course. But we thought for coverage, those 5 would be the most valuable markets to report on.
Fantastic. Well, we're coming close to the end there. So Anet, firstly, thank you so much for taking us through the session today. There was some fantastic insights there and really appreciate the time from both yourself and Similarweb and sharing this.
Thank you for having me.
Our audience today. For everyone that did tune in, a big thank you obviously to Nora for hosting these sessions, Similarweb for providing the content, and then again for delivering such a fantastic presentation. This has been recorded. It will be available on Nora TV later this week. So please tune in if you haven't had a chance to be on there on demand. For everyone else, thank you again. For the questions, we'll pass them on and try and get back to some of those after the session, and enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you very much.